violence is very rife and prevalent within our continent. And it's something that is cause for concern. In terms of what country where FGM is prevalent, I've talked about the Gambia, where we're actually having the threat of rollback, but it's not actually the worst country. It's just that it's the only country, if it happens, that would have rollback. And this is something that we shouldn't allow. It will be the only country globally that would have rollback after moving on. Well, in terms of hotspot countries, we have a country like Sierra Leone, where the practice is very rife. It's very prevalent. It has actually given rise recently to the deaths of young people. At the level of the African Commission and the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and the Welfare of the Child, we have written urgent letters of appeal to the President of Sierra Leone to ensure that that doesn't happen anymore. What my call and my ask is, when we do those urgent letters of appeal, due to our collaboration that we have, we would like the Gender Committee of PAP to join us so that we have concerted voice, so that it's not just two AU organs, but all the organs coming together. The statistics are there, the prevalence is there, and what we have done in Sierra Leone is also very evident in the paper, which has been distributed. In Somalia also, prevalence is very high, 98%, very high, okay? In Sierra Leone, 89%, in Somalia, 98%, very high. In Sudan also, 86% prevalence of FGM. These are just a few hotspot countries that we must focus attention on and see what we can do together to address the challenges. With regard to child marriage also, you find that there's a close link between FGM and child marriage. The hotspot countries where it is very prevalent, based on the research we've conducted, we have Chad, which is the third largest country in the world with the highest rate of child marriage. 70% of girls are married off. And the statistics are there. Central African Republic, second highest globally. I'm not talking about continentally, but globally. This is really cause for concern. Niger also, statistics have indicated that the incidence of child marriage are very high. It happens throughout, by the way, the continent. But these are the hotspot countries that we identify. So we need to work together and see how we can solve the issue of child marriage. I mentioned femicide. South Africa also has an alarming high rate of femicide. It's the reports, you have it in the reports and the statistics and the data. And the prevalence is unacceptable. Kenya also. South Africa, we have the UN Women. In Kenya, we're World Health Organization. Kenya is also rated as one of the highest countries with the highest rates of femicide, with 47 women being killed each week. 47 women each week in Kenya. It's quite alarming. These are the statistics. The data is there. You know, statistics don't lie. The data doesn't lie. It's there. Okay? This is cause for concern, and we should do something together. So concretely, what can we do together? I think my mechanism at the African Commission, together with this committee and other relevant committees, sometimes you have to put joint committees together. In the Gambia, it's a typical example. We have the FGM bill, we have the Gender Committee together with the Health and Human Rights Committee coming together. So sometimes you should collaborate and bring the committees together so that you have a consolidated and comprehensive approach. But I'm talking to the Gender Committee. I'm hoping that the committee will bring on board the other relevant committees of PAP. We can play a crucial role in supporting parliamentarians in their efforts for women's rights, to confront the challenges faced by women in hotspot countries and across Africa. Collaboration between the African Commission and the PAP Gender Committee is vital. We can work together and work together with concerted efforts. So I'll propose the following areas. I know that in terms of comparative advantage, PAP has a lot of experience in putting together model laws. So we can come together and collaborate to promote comprehensive legal protection of women and girls. We can develop model laws. These laws will explicitly criminalize practices such as FGM, medicalization, child marriage, femicide, and gender-based violence. By providing a consistent framework, these model laws can guide legislation in countries where these issues are prevalent. In fact, in 2025 to 2027, at the level of the mechanism of the Special Rapporteur, we have on our activity plan the preparation of a model law on the domestication of the Maputo Protocol. And we would like PAP to join us in this endeavor based on the expertise you have. We know you've had model laws in different aspects of the Maputo Protocol, but we now want to put in place a comprehensive one that speaks to all the articles of the Maputo Protocol. Maybe what we can do, if we don't have to reinvent the wheel, we can see what you have on the ground on specific aspects. We put those together and put a comprehensive framework, because the Maputo Protocol was put together to comprehensively address all matters related to women's rights violations within the continent. So let's come together and collaborate and put in place a model law. And this is a project I have in our multi-year planning. We are now part of the AU. You know that 2025 to 2027, we have to put in place plans. So let's work together to realize that. We can also issue joint press statements. I've told you about the fact that currently there's a press statement from the Commission and the committee. We would like the Gender Committee of PAP to join us when we issue our press statements so that we can raise awareness and condemn the persistence of harmful practices. And this will amplify our collective voice and pressure governments to act immediately. It is in that respect that I am going to renew the call for a statement to be issued from this committee to address the situation in the Gambia regarding to the threat of rollback. The law is still there, but there's a threat of rollback. So you must reach out to your colleague parliamentarians, and I'm ready to join you to deal with that. Engage with parliamentarians. We can actually come together and organize outreach programs to parliamentarians in hotspot countries. Have dialogue with them, advocate for legislative reform, and create a platform for exchange, fostering a deeper understanding of the issues and encouraging necessary national legislation. So this is something that we can do together to engage your colleagues at the national level. We can establish collaborative partnerships, and this will be similar to engaging them. Formal agreements, memorandum of understanding between the PAP Gender Committee and that of a special rapporteur. So we enter into a memorandum of understanding so that at least we have joint initiatives and we signal our shared commitment to addressing women's rights within our continent. So this is something that we're ready to do, and I'm at least putting it on the table. We can conduct awareness workshops and seminars. Let's come together and work together. Let's not work in silos. We all know that the AU resources are very scarce these days. We don't have enough money. We all facing the same slash in our budget. So the little resources we have, let's organize impactful events. Let's put the resources together, organize impactful events on matters that are important to raise awareness, and we target a focus group, develop joint concept notes, and provide a comprehensive information so that at least our member states will not be confused. Today they will talk to the African Commission. Tomorrow they talk to the PAP. The next day they talk to the Committee of Experts on the Rights of the Child on the same issue. How can we come together in concerted effort and work together as a team and have big impactful events where we can talk to traditional leaders, religious leaders, judges, lawyers? Because one thing I found about the African Commission and Africa AU, we have very nice instruments. Very nice policies, very nice soft laws. But if you talk to lawyers at the national level, they are not aware of those. And they don't use them when they litigate. And organizing all of these things are costly and expensive. So let's put our resources together and organize impactful convenings where everybody will be represented there. We can share best practice and model legislation, where you have model legislation that have been adopted by member states. Let's share the best practice, because some member states sometimes need to know what is happening in another country. Because they will say, oh, because of our cultural context, it's difficult. But sometimes they need to know that another country that has the same cultural context has done good work. So how do we ensure that we can share this? Sort of a peer review and sharing of best practice. We can also work together. We have our technical partners that we always work together, and we each all have our competitive advantage. So let's provide technical assistance and capacity building efforts together. Okay, so that our partners will know that we're working as on a consolidated, comprehensive, and in a collaborative framework. We develop work on sensitive legislation, human rights framework, policy development and implementation, strengthening of the intersectionality of women's rights, and equip our member states with the necessary skills to effectively advocate for women's rights issues within their legislative roles. So these are things that we can do. We can do study visits together and peer learning, study visits together. We can support networking and coalitions. These are some of the things that we can actually do together. You may also have your own ideas and feedback, and we are happy to take those on board and incorporate them in a framework for a memorandum of understanding. I therefore call upon the Pan-African Parliament Committee on Gender, Family, Youth, and People with Disabilities to join hands with the African Commission in tackling the specific problems of regression in women's rights. For now, let's focus on the one at hand, focus on FGM, let's focus on child marriage, femicide, gender-based violence, and other related issues that you may be aware of. Let's prioritize hotspot countries, fostering collaboration and implementing concrete action. We can strive towards a future where the rights and dignity of all African women in Africa are protected and respected. In conclusion, the challenges facing protecting the rights of women and girls in Africa are multifaceted and require a comprehensive and intelligent approach. It requires, and I repeat, a comprehensive and intelligent approach. You deal with sensitive issues. In every country, we have its unique context. You are parliamentarians that operate at the national level. In fact, the way we operate at the African Commission is we actually support member states, using nationals at the national level, because recognizing that they are more aware of the sensitivities that at the national level. So you come from that background. We can work together. It is crucial when we deal with these issues that we combat, especially we combat harmful traditional practices. It is crucial to engage communities, religious leaders, civil society organizations, and get collaboration with international partners to challenge harmful cultural norms, advocate for the rights and well-being of women. And I deliberately said collaborate with. We are the frontline workers. So external people can collaborate with us and use our expertise and our knowledge of the context to work with us. We must work together to collect accurate data, because data actually speaks volumes rather than us. We conduct research. We foster collaboration between government organizations and researchers for the vital effective monitoring and addressing challenges at the national level. So I think I'll end by just making my final call to reiterate that the committee should prioritize the advance of women's rights and gender equality within the context of your committee. Let us work together to create a future where all women in Africa can enjoy their rights, fulfill their potential, and contribute to the development and prosperity of our continent. Together, we can foster a transformative shift in societies, ensure that African women and girls are empowered, respected, and provided with equal rights and the opportunity they deserve. The African Commission, especially the mechanism of Special Rapporteur of the Rights of Women, bears responsibility, and we are able to fulfill that responsibility. And in pursuit of our joint endeavor, in terms of our mandates, we can work together to realize our objective. And together we are stronger, I'm sure. Human rights at the African Commission, we say it's a collective responsibility. It's not an individual responsibility. And we have a collective role and a responsibility. And I say human rights, but also women's rights also falls within that context. I thank you all for your kind attention, and I look forward to working with you going forward. This is not just a one-off, and it shouldn't be a one-off. Otherwise, we will have wasted resources coming all the way here. And time is a resource, and it's very valuable. So really, I'm counting on you to join us. But my last call is, the immediate call I have is, and I want to repeat it before I sign off, is reach out to your colleagues in the Gambia. The threat is very imminent, and we cannot afford to have it registered in our continent. I thank you all for your kind attention.
Thank you, Rapporteur, Special Rapporteur on Women's Rights. We would like to thank you very sincerely for this very important statement, which has been comprehensive, and it has clarified several points related to women in Africa and their situation. It is true that our roles are complementary, that we complement the work of the Commission, and it supports your role in order to champion human rights. Before especially taking into consideration the challenges that are faced by women, we believe within this committee that that no people can really develop if women are oppressed. So from within this committee, we endeavor in order to share all what you have said in your very important presentation. We're very proud of you as rapporteurs working in order to achieve this important goal that we set ourselves. You know that Africa lives a lot of disparities as far as the situation of women are concerned. There are some developments and progress that has been achieved in some countries, but there are also some setbacks, and we do regret that such a situation prevails in 2024. I must say that women do not only suffer in Africa, but even in so-called developed countries, women are still oppressed. And we also know that women are the weakest link in all societies, and it is women who suffer to a great extent from the environmental, economic, social, and cultural conditions. And we also know that societies, including all categories, in all societies, women are the weakest link. You have come with a lot of proposals, and you have spoken about the FGM and also the rape to which young girls are exposed. We have discussed all these issues, and we have even drawn up a plan in order to organize study days and workshops, and regrettably the parliament was suspended for a certain period, and this did not allow us to carry out these activities. But what is sure is that our objective is the same, that is to enable and empower women. And while I'm chairing this committee, but as a representative of Morocco, our experience in Morocco, we have achieved a lot of progress, and we are about to vote a new law on the personal status personal status, and I hope that we will have the opportunity of sharing this new law. And I would like to welcome you to Morocco, welcome you, Special Rapporteur and members of this committee. And we must go to countries where women are oppressed, and also go to some countries who have made progress in order to share all these experiences. So in my personal name, I would like to welcome you and welcome Madame Lucia, who represents the Bureau here. And I would like to welcome you to share this experience of Morocco. So I just had to make some comments on the presentation of Her Excellency, the Special Rapporteur. Now I give the floor to Madame Lucia in order to make her statement on behalf of the Bureau. So then it is up to you whether you would like us to go straight to the discussion or hear the presentation. So we'll take the decision after the statement made by Madame Lucia. You have the floor, Madam.
Good afternoon to all. I'd like to greet the Chairperson of the Gender Committee and the Rapporteur and representative of the Commission on Human and People's Rights, representative of women, our legal support, PAP legal officer. I had seen, I don't know if you're still in the room, the clerk of the Pan-African Parliament, and all. You're still here? Okay. So all colleagues, members of parliaments, the technicians, staff, communication professionals, and our interpreters in the booth doing an excellent work, allowing each of us to speak in their own language. Madam Chair, with your permission, I'm going to share some reflections and inputs to enrich the document presented by the Special Rapporteur on Women's Rights of the Commission on Human and People's Rights in Banjul. The Pan-African Parliament has said, and very well by the Rapporteur, is the third organ of the African Union, and we have a very specific mandate. So everything dealing with legislation is our responsibilities, be it in terms of awareness raising for ratification and also the development of model laws. Just for information to you, this Parliament has been bold enough to adopt a resolution in plenary last year, giving a mandate to this commission, to this committee now, is now developed the legal, the political and legal model law on gender equality, and this is a reality in Parliament. So we are indeed aware of everything that is related to women's rights, women and girls' rights. And we have mandated our gender committee to work on these matters. And the gender committee has been doing an excellent work. And this work is not only the work of the gender committee, it's a joint work with the Health and Social Affairs Committee, because these issues are cross-cutting between the two committees, and we can still add to this the Justice Committee. So we are talking about, because we're talking about legal issues here. So your challenge of the partnership, we accept it, and we go beyond your proposal. The partnership is not with the Gender Committee. The partnership is with the Pan-African Parliament, with the organ Pan-African Parliament. So the Parliament will mandate the committees with responsible for these matters and other matters, because our model law is far more comprehensive. We talk about access to land, education, equal payment for both genders, justice, access to justice, the political participation, and in decision making. So, and all the issues you mentioned, sexual and reproductive health, child marriage, FGM, and gender-based violence, inheritance law, and we also address issues related to climate change. So these are cross-cutting topics, and we believe that this partnership must be an institutional one. It cannot be with the Gender Committee, but rather an institutional partnership between the Pan-African Parliament as an organ of the AU and the Commission, which is also an organ of the AU. So I can assure you that this responsibility, I will convey this message to the President, and this willingness of the Commission to establish this partnership with the Parliament. And we will work on a memorandum of understanding to this effect, because we have experience under the AGA project, so the Africa Governance Architecture, and we are working on a model law also with ECOSOC, but the partnership can extend to other institutions. And I should say that I'm very happy now and pleased to see your openness as the representative of the Commission and Rapporteur. But I'm happy because we are now at the very crucial stage of the implementation of the AGA project activities. And we have an activity on women. And this activity is lagging behind. So we won't have any excuses, Madam Clark, to say that we don't have the resources, because we do have resources, we have the money. And we challenge this committee, Madam Chair Faris, to see with the members of the committee when you can organize a mission. And I challenge you that it's a mission to the Gambia, taking into account the situation that we have, this imminent regression on FGM. I'm also pleased to note that we have a representative from the Gambia in our committee. And I commend you and welcome you because you started yesterday. She was sworn in yesterday in plenary, so we will have the opportunity to peacefully and calmly look into this matter and see how we can be of assistance. And personally, as a member of the Bureau and in charge of gender issues, this is my portfolio within the Bureau. The gender issues are under my responsibility. So in July, when we received a petition from the Gambia, we immediately conveyed it to the Gender Committee, which met in Nairobi. And this matter has already been discussed by the Gender Committee, and we will continue to work on this. We cannot allow our girls to go through the suffering that is the female genital mutilation. It's very serious. It leads to loss of life. It leaves consequences that we cannot measure. In addition to the physical sequels, the damage, the psychological damage is priceless. We have an obligation to protect our girls. And I'm also pleased to note that the Gambia was the first country to ratify the Maputo Protocol. And this makes our work easier with our colleague members of parliament in the Gambia. You know, they can also confront them in order to stop this. We're still in time because the law hasn't been voted yet. If it had been voted, it would be harder, but it hasn't been. So we can still do the hard work. I know it's not easy. It is a fight ahead. And us women, We are prepared to win all our battles. We are not afraid. We are the ones who educate our men. So we are the ones who should fix the mistakes we make in educating our sons. And we need to show to those who believe that sexual pleasure is above the health of a child. We need to show them that this is not a selfish issue. This is a matter of life and death. It's a matter of respect for human rights. The Pan-African Parliament will not be silenced. We will not be silenced. The voice of the Parliament will be heard. And we will be together in this fight. Because our mandate is clearly to be the voice of the African people. And these children are part, they are also the African people. And they are the present and the future of our continent. We have no right to compromise the future of these children. We don't have that right. So let us respect these children. And this is directly linked to the theme of the year. This is part of education. Because everything we do in life is based on education, access to information. When we do not have access to information, we make mistakes. We don't seek for help. That's why we need to value and allow our children to have access to education, irrespective of sex and gender, be it women, girls, or boys. We need to educate them all together, because when we educate the boys and we don't educate the girls, we will have this imbalance. When we educate girls and don't educate boys, there will be this imbalance. That's why we need to give access to all to education, an inclusive education, an education that will allow all of them, boys and girls, men and women, to have access to a crucial instrument in life, information. With information, we can do everything. Without information, we are all lost. I'm not going to be long, because we have a long agenda to go through. And those who know me know that I'm very passionate about these issues. I've carried on my back in my country the law on parity. I cried. I didn't sleep. I was threatened, but I did not quit. Today we have a parity law. It came into force in 2020. Today we have 38.5% of women in parliament, 42% of women in municipal assemblies, so city councils, and we have parity in decision-making. There is no public enterprise and no public institution in Cape Verde where we don't have the participation based on gender equality. If there is a company where the board of directors has 3 administrators, at least one must be a woman. And this was a hard task, but we managed to do so. And this is possible in other countries. In addition to that, we also had a hard fight in 2009 for a law on gender-based violence. I don't know if Madam Rapporteur can then add this to your document, because I just I didn't see the Cape Verde experience here in your document. I think this should be shared. We have 3 experiences that we think should reflect in your document. First is the law on GBV that acknowledges this as a public offense. So anyone who witnesses someone being a victim of gender-based violence, be it physical, psychological torture, sexual harassment in the workplace, violence on property, anyone can report such cases because it's a public offense or crime in this case. You do not have to wait the victim to be courageous enough to report it or for a relative to do so. Anyone, a neighbor, a friend who witnessed such a situation, as sexual violence also. So there are 5 types of crime that we identify in our law. So in Cape Verde, that's making this a public offense. The second proposal that I would like also to include in your document has to do with an inclusion in the national budget law in 2018, a chapter on gender equality. What does this allow? This allows us to do. Cape Verde is one of the first countries to do this. So our national budget law is what approves all conditions for funding, access to funding, be it in terms of investment and program budget. So what are we going to do as members of parliament? We verify if the budget contains a budget based on the principle of gender equality. And this is classified by gender markers. And we already have this in our budget planning system in the Ministry of Finances. All ministries in Cape Verde now can do this and are compelled to do this. And we can follow up as politicians to know how much money in education is allocated to girls, how much money for the Ministry of Agriculture will benefit women with access to water and land. So I think this is an experience that could be shared if you are available to include this in your document, just to show that there has been this progress and that this can be further improved and shared with other member states. And lastly, what we brought to Parliament is our experience on the parity law and parity in terms of political participation in decision-making. Because most countries with the parity law, it's only for political participation. But we were bold enough to go one step further, political participation and decision-making, to allow women to be at the top of institutions, public institutions, in order to be able to give their contribution. To conclude, I'd like to say that I've just been informed that the agreement is already signed because we had started the process, but then we had these issues with the Bureau of the PAP. This happened at the time when we were preparing for the elections, or the president went for elections in his country. So this document was not shared, but is already signed, and we will now follow up. The document has been signed, the partnership between our institutions, the MOU, I believe, in this case. So we now should just materialize this protocol. I would like to reaffirm the full readiness and availability of the Bureau of the Pan-African Parliament and encourage the Gender Committee to increase their activities with the member states, because this is one of the missions of this committee, to decentralize its activities. And I challenge the committee to conduct a mission between July and August, a mission to the Banjul Commission, clearly with the involvement of our colleagues from the Gambia, and coordinate the necessary actions, because this is a mission that demands a lot of responsibility from all of us. We cannot interfere with the sovereignty of a member state, but we cannot also allow a member state to violate the human rights of the African people. So this is the situation. There must be balance between things. And we have this responsibility to work on the model laws. And clearly, the committee, through the legal officer, will present what we've already done and the progress we've had with consultations. I've seen in the documents from item 10, we have the a very clear listing of what has been done and has to do with what the special rapporteur presented. So again, reaffirm our readiness to collaborate on the ratification of all instruments which promote the rights of girls and women, the girl child, work in the development of model laws that will ensure the domestication of the legal instruments that have been ratified, and also work together for the capacity building and information of African citizens in our member states. So thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you all success and great work. Count on me. Together we are stronger, and yes, we can win all challenges. Thank you.
And now I would like to thank you, Madam Vice President. And before opening the discussion on this theme, and I would like to first give the floor to the legal counsel in the Pan-African Parliament in order to talk to us about the model law on gender equality in Africa. You have the floor, sir. Distinguished legal counsel, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
I thank you, Madam Chairperson, for giving me the floor. Honorable Vice President of the Pan-African Parliament, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Commissioner, Honorable members of the Committee on Gender, honorable colleagues present here, it is a great honor for me to come here together with a technical team which has worked on the legal framework on the model law on gender equality, and to come back with this team in order to present to you the outcome on the drafting of the political and legal framework. You'd recall that the Pan-African Parliament during its session of November 2022 had adopted had allowed that a model law be drafted on gender equality. And this was under the leadership of your committee. And so it was. So it was agreed that instead of speaking only about gender equality, we had to go further and speak about equity on gender. So the title changed a little bit, slightly. And as you know, before adopting or drafting any model law, we always start with a study which would guide and drive this model law. It is this study which should be elaborated, and it was also of the opinion of your committee that this study be inspired from the experiences of African populations. So contrary to other model laws where we have to hire a team of experts to draft and do research, we started by listening to people's organization. It is on the basis of their experiences and their contributions that we have been able to include their aspirations and contributions in writing, taking into consideration other preliminary research. So with my team, I will present to you the document which you already have, a policy and legal framework for a model law on gender equality and equity. In this document, you will see that at the beginning, we describe the framework in which this model law has been drafted or formulated, and then we present the guidelines which this model law which will cover. I'm quite delighted that the Honorable Commissioner had already covered the major part, and particularly as concerns the Maputo Protocol. And this model law wants to be a model law which would go further than the Maputo Protocol, because, as you know, the Protocol of Maputo was negotiated, and during the negotiations, a lot of elements are sidelined. So the model law goes further or beyond that. So I thought that we could probably refresh our memories on the mandate of PAP, which is to ensure the full participation of African peoples in the economic development and integration of the continent. And this mandate of PAP should be carried out as part of the institutional architecture of the African Union, which includes institutions such as the Commission, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights of Banjul, which is part of the judiciary branch of the African Union, although the Commission is a quasi or is almost a jurisdictional structure, and other institutions together with other African Union organs with which PAP has to interact with or collaborate with. I just wanted to I was about to allude to what we come from, but as we are here, we are operating on the basis of the CIRT protocol, which allows PAP, among others, to harmonize laws of member states, including the Malabo Protocol, which has been ratified only by 15 countries and is not yet in force. And the last country to have ratified it is the Central African Republic. In order to get back to the mandate of PAP, which could be subdivided into four, the first element is about an almost legislative function, and it is here where the formulation of law models is appropriate. PAP has the role of helping the African Union through its members to harmonize their laws, including in the field of gender equality. PAP has also an oversight mandate. It carries it out at two levels vis-à-vis the officials of the African Union by using its representatives in PAP in order for them to oversee, to carry out an oversight vis-à-vis the national authorities or the executive branch. And then the budgetary function, which is also done at two levels. At the continental level, PAP makes recommendations on the African Union budget, and at the national level, parliamentarians from PAP would normally have an influence on national budgets as concerns at the continental level. And this involves the parliamentarian diplomacy and in the mission which is proposed in the Gambia, which I suppose will be endorsed by the plenary, will be part of parliamentary diplomacy, where PAP will use its position in order to speak to national members of parliament of the Gambia in order to convince them to give up the path which they have embarked on. So this model law finds its source in Article 3 or Paragraph 3 of Article 11 of the PAP Protocol, and also on Paragraph 7. Having said that, I wanted also to recall that the drafting of a law model, in principle, is done at over three stages. The first stage is the initiation, which has already been done, and here we are at the stage of formulation. This stage includes part of the research on the terms of reference of the model law. The document which you have constitutes almost the terms of reference, because it is on the basis of this document that we will draft the model law, and then comes the phase of adoption, which will go from the committee to the plenary. It is this procedure which has allowed PAP to adopt up to now 6 model laws. The other 6 model laws, which are on the right-hand side, are being formulated. Your law model on gender equality and equity is part of that. In order to formulate this model law, we had to be guided by the legal instruments of the African Union, because one of the objectives of the model law is to facilitate the domestication
des cadres juridiques.
Domestication of all legal texts, and it's the same thing we have for the Maputo Protocol that the Honorable Commissioner just talked about. This was one of the first instruments, the first instrument, in fact, for reference. We also have the African Charter, the Charter for Good Governance, and we also have the Charter for Youth, which deals with youth matters. We also have the Protocol on Children Matters, and we also have the Protocol on Disability, the Protocol on older persons. And so these are the main instruments that have guided the formulation of this legal framework. The African Union also has policy documents. They're not treaties, but they're documents that guide policies at the African Union. And notably, we have the Solemn Declaration on Equity and Gender. We also have Agenda 2063 and also the Action Plan on Family. In addition to that, since many countries in Africa are members of the UN, they have also signed and ratified certain UN instruments, such as the Convention on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, and we also thought it was important to draw inspiration from this instrument. On a sub-regional point of view, we also have instruments that we have. So for instance, in SADC, in ECOWAS, or even in the East African Community, we do have instruments. And we also draw from practice in certain countries. And before I continue, I can say that we also took into consideration certain reservations that have been formulated by certain states during the ratification of the Maputo Protocol. And personally, I thought that the model law on gender and equality and equity is actually a very sensitive law, one of the most sensitive that we are going to be coming up with. And the Maputo Protocol, we have looked at the reservations that the states had. And so the list of reservations is what you have projected. It's probably not exhaustive, but it illustrates the reservations. So for instance, countries had reservations with regards to abortion, or with regards to reproductive rights, or we also had military action where we were supposed to be increasing gender spending. We also had reservations on the death penalty. And I'm not going to go into all of them. And so developing a model law on gender and equality, a law that states are going to be able to accept and use, we need to be very sensitive to the reservations that states have had. We also need to be able to react to certain national realities. So for instance, in Gambia, if the Pan-African Parliament or the Commission does not react, and that this modification, this legal modifications go through as proposed, it's going to be a way of backtracking on the work that we have been doing at the Pan-African Parliament. And that's where we see that our interest for our Commission for the Pan-African Parliament should be proactive with regards to this matter. So this is a policy and legal framework that has led us to go consult people and populations in the field. And these consultations were mainly on major themes. At the beginning, we were guided by the Maputo Protocol main themes, and these were access to land, access to education, employment and remuneration, and all the others that you have listed on the screen. But as we went along in the discussions and we were collecting opinions from civil society organizations and other partners, I remember that we had at least one of the consultations where the African Commission was represented. I think it was in Zambia, and they were not able to be represented in Nairobi, unfortunately. And from these consultations, we realized that either there were proposals on the basis of which it was important to deal with certain themes separately. For instance, the matter of elimination of FGM. And so this was included in at least one of the themes. But finally, we decided to really separate it as a separate theme. It's the same thing for elimination of early marriage or child marriage, and also the matter of equality in family situations. And so we gathered these proposals that have been formulated in the form of recommendations. And I think my colleague is going to take us through these proposals. And probably after the reaction from the room, and maybe we can thereafter add anything that may have been left out. With your kind permission, Madam Chair, I'm going to request that I give the floor to my colleague. My colleague is going to continue with the rest of the presentation.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Special Rapporteur, honorable parliamentarians, legal counsel, and other colleagues in the room. As already stated by the legal counsel, quite a number of the areas we looked at, he already covered. So I would just be going to some specifics. He's talked about the basic findings and focus and how we have come up with 15 chapters in the proposed model law. And specifically, he's talked about the introduction of the equality in marriage and family life. We have also looked at the specifics on migration and gender equality and equity, and also another specific on women and technology and climate change as core components of what we need to bring to the focus in this model law. The consultation was quite encompassing and reached out to quite a number of groups. The objective and focus he also talked about. And the question that also often came out during the consultation was, why do we need a model law? Because we have the Maputo Protocol, we have CEDAW, and we have other instruments. And we technically looked deeply into this and came up with the basic reason so that if the parliamentarians are taking this back to their countries, as has been suggested, this becomes a very strong basis to make this advocacy to national parliaments on why the need for a model law. So part of it is that we have taken time to identify some basic deficiencies in the Maputo Protocol and also gather what is reflective of the thoughts from civil society organizations and try to bring it to play in the proposed model law and what should actually be a standard. So these are the areas, the 15 areas, articles: access to education, access to land, employment, and remuneration. So, for example, in access to education, Madam Chair, one of the factors we have looked at and one of the very specific inclusions in this provision is on issues around menstrual poverty and how it implicates the girl child's access to education and retention in the school setting. Within this scope also, we looked at the challenges of teenage pregnancies and completion rates. And we have made specific provisions and propositions on how states should take definite steps to ensure that girls who fall pregnant within the school period are not shamed, but protected and encouraged through adequate counseling to be able to continue and resume school and possibly stay in school when they can. On the issues of access to land, we have also made some specific recommendations in the proposed law on how women should have equity in land ownership. We have encouraged states to take adequate steps to make audits of the current land positions in their various countries, and then take very targeted steps in ensuring that women's access to land is not limited. We talked about reproductive rights and women in armed conflict situations specifically. This was also something that caught our attention, and we specifically encouraged states to ensure that within this provision that women have adequate counseling and psychological protection, because they oftentimes are the most vulnerable in this situation. And even though actions are taken, which we found that in some situations they are not women specific, they are not women focused. So it becomes something of urgent attention. And interestingly, we have so much talked about elimination of FGM in our society. So here again in the model law, it caught our attention and we've made it a specific chapter. And we hope from the ideas that have come already from the special rapporteur and other speakers that it's actually a step in the right direction. We talked about gender-based violence, child marriages, early marriage, and all of that. And coming from the situation from Sierra Leone, as we heard sometime earlier today, I think it's an important and interesting perspective to also include. So when we go back after now to make adjustments to this in line with your suggestions, I'm sure we are going to be reflecting on it so that not just the perpetrator of child marriage is held responsible, but also people that engage in facilitating it, in participating in the celebration of such marriages are also going to be held responsible. So we've talked about climate change and ensuring inclusiveness. In this time of inclusiveness, we've talked about men, the Honorable the Vice President talked about inclusion of boys in the crusade and advocacy. So this is something that reflects through the model law that men must be involved in this cause, so that it's not an exercise in futility. And in this proposition, in the documents you have before you, distinguished honorables, we identified 4 core areas that we see that might be challenges. And, this is culture, religion, the lack of political will, and poverty, which ravages continuously the continent. But we are convinced that with the model law and the approach and the zeal we see in the room today, that this is doable and achievable. And going beyond the model law, we had talked about how do we make this model law come to light? How is it going to be an effective instrument? And we talk about legal consciousness, legal mobilization, and sustained deliberative advocacy. So by legal consciousness, we need to get this to the people. How do we get this model law down to the roots? And we have to rely on you for people to know what their rights are and how they can make claims where there is violation. And then the second aspect is legal mobilization, that we are not just advocating for the coming into place of a model law, but how do we give effect? How do we give a teaching to this model law? We need to mobilize the law. It needs to be tested. I'm happy the Honorable Special Rapporteur talked about lawyers in our various countries. Here, we need to engage. We need to do specific trainings and advocacies to ensure that the model law is tested in the courts. And with the help of the parliamentarians, we sustain this advocacy in every fora that would be possible. So again, answering that question, we talked about solidarity, training and education, benchmarking. Benchmarking for us here, it's important because if the model law finally comes in place, it's going to be able to afford states the opportunity to appraise themselves, to ask themselves questions. What have you done? How far have you gone? And what is it that you need to do to come up to speed with this law, and also to drive for some uniformity amongst the committee of states. The final notes and comments, I would hand over back to the legal officer. We are happy to take your inputs from the document that is before you. And I appreciate the input of other technical committee members that worked on it in the various consultations, and the committee members, the clerk, and everyone that supported this process and research. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think since we are going to have a question-answer session, I think we'll have the chance to respond to any questions. Thank you so much for your kind attention. And once again, thank you. Thank you very much, our legal counsel. Thank you very much to your colleague as well, who has really well explained the content of this model law on gender equality and equity. And now we're going to open up the floor so that we can have a discussion on Madam Janet's presentation on behalf of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and also the policy and legal framework for the model law on gender and equality presented by our legal counsel. I'm now going to take the list of those who may wish to take the floor in this discussion or ask questions or make contributions. We are going to give you the floor to anyone who may wish to take the floor. We'll go round the table, and that way everybody can take the floor. I'm also going to finally take the floor after the round table. Thank you. You have the floor, ma'am. If you have a question, a clarification, or a contribution that you wish to make, please go ahead.
I wouldn't do my country justice if I stay quiet, because at the moment, Gambia is the hotspot, because we made good laws in terms of women and children. We had the 2010 Children's Act, and also we had the Women's Act. We had the 2015 Women's Act, which was which criminalized FGM. And now we are in the verge of seeing it repealed. And I think with the appeal of the rapporteur, the special rapporteur, I would make more emphasis on that. and give it the shortest time frame possible. Because as we speak, most of you would have seen me texting, because I was texting my committee. We are pushing and pulling about the report because the report is ready. But my opinion is that we haven't done justice to the people, because we've not gone out to our communities to actually get to know how FGM have affected these people in the communities. We have spoken to CSOs, we have spoken to institutions, but I think the Gambian people deserve to know the effects, the consequences, the realities of FGM. I myself, I'm a victim of FGM, and nobody have heard from me. So I think as a representative of the people, we are looking at 2 dates that are very important. The 4th of July, when the report is scheduled to be laid, and the 17th of July, when the consideration stage of the bill. And I think if AU as a body is going to do something, they must do something before the 4th of July. They must make sure that that report is not tabled on the 4th of July, because it will be at risk to the people, especially the Gambian women. The report is not ready to be laid because it doesn't have all the consequences of FGM and how it affects the people. That's why I've been texting them. The committee is going to validate the report. And in my opinion, a set of people cannot validate a report that will affect 2 million people. And this will trickle down to other West African countries. Like the Special Rapporteur said, today, if this bill is repealed, next is going to be Nigeria, next is going to be Niger, next is going to be Chad, and it will be across Africa. So I think action must be taken. And I also want this gathering to know that there are ways of bringing in laws in the Gambia. We have one way of the government bringing in a bill. A committee can also bring a bill. A member can also bring a bill. And this one was a private member bill. It was brought about by a member. So in as much as we are blaming the government, I put blame on them because they've been silent about it. There have been certain people that have violated the laws of the country by incite, because incite is a crime. If a pro-FGM person comes out and calls for a community FGM, whilst it is against the law, I think government should have come out to show an example by arresting that person. At least that would have scared people, because I was there on the 18th of March in the first reading. Most members wanted to vote no, but they were afraid of how society would see them. We had a whole group of religious leaders there intimidating the members. And I think action needs to be taken, because the commission also need to address the religious aspect of it, because that is also playing a very important part of it. I think I would also listen to some of my members, but within the committee, I think action needs to be taken as early as the 4th of July. If a delegation is to be sent, they need to go out before the committee presents their bill, or I am the chair of the gender committee. It's a joint committee, the gender and the health committee. We have 2 co-chairs. I think a meeting needs to be convened with the 2 co-chairs to make sure that the report is thoroughly concluded before it is tabled, because that's what I've been persuading the committee to do at the moment. We've been sending texts here and there, and I think action must be taken for it to be withheld for now until proper action is taken, because we are at a crossroad. It is quite serious, and if this thing is repealed, child marriage is going to come next, and then who knows, it's going to open floodgates. Thank you.
إلى السيدة.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
استسمح فقط السيدة المفوضة، هل تودين جمع جميع الأسئلة أو أن تردين على كل سؤال على حدة؟ هل تودين
We're going to give you the opportunity to respond to all the questions, or would you prefer to answer the questions one by one? So wait for all the questions and then you're going to have the answers after. You have the floor, ma'am.
Okay. I will have comments maybe on both presentations. And I would like to thank Madam Commissioner for the very good presentation that she has done. And I will say that it saddened me to hear that Gambia is proposing, maybe the members or whoever is proposing to come up with the FGM bill, maybe for them to repeal the one that criminalize such action. Because I think in this day and age where the world is going, and we on Africa continent, I think that we have to revisit or relook at the way we, or for example, if I take my country, I would not complain of those kind of things because in Seychelles, we don't practice FGM, we don't have child marriage, but our constitution protect women, men, children, disabled people. They are all protected under the constitution. We don't have tribes. We are one nation, you know. We don't have the problem of FGM, but we see that it is something wrong to be done. It's wrong. So it's time for maybe Gambia and other African countries who are practicing those kind of things to put an end with all those things. So I must say, why? Why are these countries, why are you doing this? Why is Gambia regressing, I will say? This is a regression. Why is it that that Gambia is taking that step? Maybe I would like to have some information with regards to that. And with regards to the presentation from Professor and our legal officer, I was privileged to be in Kenya when we met with ECOSOC and other civil society members in Kenya for us to discuss on the model law. One thing, thank you for the presentation. It's very, I think most of what we have discussed is in the document. But I have a query with regards to the access to, I think it was something that was discussed quite intensely with by members, access to a proper house. We have discussed on access on land. It is in the document. But what about the access to a proper house? Which do we think that it needs to be included in this because it was lengthily discussed? Do we think that we have to put it in this document, or it is something that we are disregarding with regards to proper house when it comes to gender? Or you think that we should not consider this whilst they have talk on access of land? Because for me, access of land, they can do their business, agriculture, things like that. But still, to build a house, but it's not written as white and black in the model law. Whereas in my country, women, men, we have our own land, we have our house, we have access to that. You see? Most of African countries, I think also it's like this, but there's still a problem in some countries. So don't we think that it should be included in that model law? Thank you. Merci.
Thank you so much for this wonderful invitation. I'd like to greet everyone here, Madam Commissioner, and the Legal Counsel, and our committee clerk. And I'm going to go in the same direction as my colleague from the Seychelles. So I feel we're helpless today when we listen to our colleague from the Gambia, since we know that for us in Mauritius and in other islands in the Indian Ocean, we are African states, but we have voted many model laws in our parliament. We have talked about amendments on protection of women and their rights, children, and so forth. And we all know that what is happening in certain countries, the Gambia, when we talk about FGM, we don't have that in our legal documents in Mauritius. We are still talking about the Maputo Protocol that has not yet been ratified by many countries, including mine, Mauritius, which is quite unfortunate. But at the same time, we're wondering why. Why has the protocol still not been ratified? In order for this to happen, this ratification, I think we still have, 7 countries. I think I stand corrected. We still have 7, is it 7 countries? 10 countries that have not yet ratified. So I'm just trying to understand, since I joined the Pan-African Parliament, why is it that certain countries are hesitant about ratification of this protocol? And now we're coming with another legal document with modifications that would be comparable to what we have in the Maputo Protocol, this policy and legal framework for model law on gender and equality, a very good document. Since there were certain aspects that needed modification in the Maputo Protocol, and in which way our country is going to be encouraged, after having voted for so many laws, to be able at the end of the day to protect women and children so that they can at the end of the day contribute and vote for the law, for instance, for countries like the Gambia and for other countries that have FGM as an issue. What kind of campaign should we carry out against these countries that have gotten into this comfort zone, where in their comfort now, they're very happy with the laws that they have, the modification they have. So for instance, in Mauritius, for the last 20 years, in 2012, we had the Equal Opportunities Act. We had the Protection from Domestic Violence Act, Sexual Protection Act, Employment Rights Act, where we were supposed to protect women against sexual harassment and also to have equal remuneration. And so we have had many bills that have been voted in Parliament. And so for us in Mauritius, is it now a law that we are going to propose to the Parliament for voting? And today, I think it's very clear that the Maputo Protocol and this new modern law is not going to be voted very quickly. Let's be very, very honest with each other. It's not going to be ratified quickly by all African countries, because we have cultural, religious influence. We also have different priorities. Each African state has its own respective priorities, socioeconomic issues. We also have different ways of understanding, different sensitivities. And so I think we are working very well But I'm just wondering whether we are doing it in the best way possible. Shouldn't we be looking at how we are going about this matter so that we can actually reach all these countries so that they can understand the urgency of this kind of a document? So maybe, I don't know whether we need to have a more aggressive campaign. I don't know. Because we have been having this campaign. I know you've been continuing. It's been ongoing. But unfortunately, we still have this statu quo. And maybe we need to rethink how we can approach countries so that they can understand the urgency of this very important matter, as our colleague from the Gambia was talking about. She's talking about this urgency. And it's actually giving me a feeling of panic. How are we going to react and act before the 4th of July to be able to really do something tangible? Well, no, I don't think so. The answer is no, we're not going to be able to do anything before the 4th of July. So what are we going to do? And so this is the question that I have. And I think for all the model laws. So I think this legal framework is even better than the Maputo Protocol. And so now how are we going to apply it? How are we going to make sure that African countries understand the urgencies? Maybe this is what we need to think about, what strategies to employ. This is what I have to say. Thank you so much for your attention.
شكرا سيد.
I thank you, Madam Honorable Member. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I would like also to thank very sincerely the presenters for their brilliant presentations. The Constitution of Benin protects women. I'm saying the Constitution of Benin protects women's rights and criminalizes the FGM. I would like to ask about the countries which have not yet signed this protocol, the Protocol of Maputo, the Maputo Protocol. If we could have a list of these countries which have not yet signed the protocol. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, thank you, Madam Honorable Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation, Commissioner, Honorable Madam Janet. In Zimbabwe, we have 30% of women in parliament, and our president of the Senate in parliament is a woman. Deputy Speaker is a woman. We have ministers and deputy ministers in various ministries, which we are trying, and we are together on this. We also, further, we have introduced the youth quota in Zimbabwe. It will be my proposal that parties in all African countries include the women quota and youth quota system in their constitution that address women empowerment. While the government continues to make positive strides improving the welfare of women and access to means of production, we remain affected by the illegal sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe by Britain and USA. I therefore call upon PAP to continue advocate for the removal of the sanctions imposed on us, because it is affecting women and young women in Zimbabwe. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable. I give you the floor now. Honourable Member, you have the floor.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you very much. The Deputy Chair of the Gender Committee, thank you for giving me the floor. Distinguished participants in attendance, I would like to say that Angola has been developing very important policies for the development and protection of women's rights. I don't have a question per se. I'm just going to make a few comments and remarks. With regard to the Maputo Protocol, Angola there is some feedback on the microphone there. We know that gender equality and the promotion of women's rights are conditions for the reduction of poverty, for sustainable development, and good governance. Probably a headphone is close to the microphone and it's causing feedback.
You should maybe remove this. Yeah, when you speak, you remove this. Okay. Yes, okay. Okay.
Gender equality.
A igualdade do gênero e a promoção.
Just remove this.
No, está?
Completely.
Oh, sorry. Can you remove the phones? Espero que agora tenha melhorado.
What's wrong?
Não tem nada a ver com isto. Vamos lá experimentar novamente.
Aproxima mais o
Dando continuidade.
Continuing, it's.
You can just speak with this. Just try to speak with it. Je lui donne ça complètement. Marie bébé, on est champion. Allez, let's try.
A igualdade no gênero e a promoção.
Gender equality and the promotion of women's rights are necessary conditions for the reduction of poverty, sustainable development, and good governance. And the accession of African countries to the Maputo Protocol or the ratification is important, given that women's rights have been largely marginalized. And Angola, the Angolan government, has often been driven to effectively implement the Maputo Protocol. Another very serious matter that we've heard about here has to do with female genital mutilation and early marriages and femicide. These are issues that require our constant reflection within our countries, our parliaments, and the Pan-African Parliament as well, so that we can develop laws with severe penalties for the perpetrators of these offenses, and mainly with regard to female genital mutilation and early marriages. It's inadmissible that a child has to be married off so early in her life because someone wants to, well, a while ago we were looking into a story of a gentleman that's 60+ years old who was getting married to a 10-year-old child. And this is happening in Africa, in our continent. So we need to reflect. We need to look into those issues and establish heavy sentences for this kind of offense. According to the World Health Organization, over 200 million girls have suffered from female genital mutilation, and I believe that more than 200 million women or girls must be suffering some kind of psychological damage due to this FGM phenomenon, because this is a painful process. The body feels it, and the girl child grows up, and it really ends their self-esteem as a woman, a grown woman. In Angola, gender-based violence is a crime. It is punishable by law. Our criminal code establishes a sentence for the crime of gender-based violence, and we can thus say that we are rather advanced in this regard. The Honorable Vice President of the Pan-African Parliament, she's now absent, mentioned the gender-sensitive budget. In Angola, for instance, our national budget already incorporates this gender component, the gender-sensitive budgeting. And this is to address the inequalities and to promote sustainable development of women in particular. We know that in Africa, the women are the ones that really support the home. The home only stands, the household only stands because of women. So in Angola, this gender-sensitive budget, it is a fact, a reality on the ground. So much so that this budget is allocated to the Ministry of Social Welfare, Family and Women Protection, because it gives women access to basic social services. And it also it has an immediate benefit in terms of the rights to the family, the community, and necessarily to the country as a whole. So this is what I wanted to share with you, and thank you very much.
السيدة النائبة حلو تفضل.
Yes, Madam Honorable Member, you have the floor.
Rebonjour tout le monde.
Good afternoon once again. I will be very brief in my statement. I just wanted first to congratulate Madame the Special Rapporteur for her presentation, which has been very brilliant. You have enlightened us on several important points because the topic of women is very complex, particularly nowadays because women faces a lot of difficulties. For my part, it is just an experience that I had. I had the chance of meeting parliamentarians from Somalia on the occasion of a visit to our assembly, and I have been able to plead to those parliamentarians by explaining to them how important it was to ratify the Protocol of Maputo, because Somalia is part of the 10 member countries which have not yet signed this protocol. This is an essential and indispensable protocol for the safeguarding of women's rights. And to conclude, we in Djibouti have ratified several instruments and laws criminalizing all sorts of negative practices such as FGM and early marriage, because they are very harmful to the survival of women. We must say also that the commitment of Djibouti in favor of women's rights have been reaffirmed by concrete actions which are done at the Assembly, which are reflected through laws and on the ground, because in one part of the country, which is in the remote parts of the country, these practices still exist. And in order to eradicate these practices, we raise awareness among women, both in the remote parts of the country and also in the capital city, so that this harmful practice be eradicated. Thank you. Yes, please. I thank you for giving me the floor. This is not a question, just a short contribution. We have spoken about gender equality. Gender equality increases the power of women and contributes into the transformation of society by having an influence on the society and on the market. When women have means to act on the political and economic scene, they can act in favor of changes of public choices. Investment in the promotion of gender equality today and tomorrow is a great opportunity for Africa, taking into consideration its demographic and social characteristics. Briefly, we must see to it that parity or equality is achieved within institutions. And we should focus on the prevention, on the use and the exploitation of women. Thank you. I thank you, Madam Honorable Member. On my part, I would like also to add one point, and I will speak about the Kingdom of Morocco. I think that the Kingdom of Morocco is on the path of the promotion of women's rights, based particularly on the 2011 Constitution, which focuses on the fight against the discrimination against women. And also we have Law 103, which is a law on on gender equality, and also 96 seats within the parliament of Morocco is occupied by women. And on the occasion of holding this session, I would like also to add that since the theme of this session is education, I do not think that there is no other key to raise awareness without education, because the members have spoken about proposals to repeal laws against women. And we have to build up an African mindset which respects women since childhood. We must build up generations which would rebel against these traditions and the injustice against women. And I think that education will be one of the most important factors. The question which will I leave until the end of my statement is a philosophical problem or a philosophical question. The question now is not about laws. What is more difficult is that the question is that how could we rectify this chauvinistic male mindset against women? And the great problem is women having some chauvinistic positions against women themselves. And this contributes to the promotion of the traditions according to which society gives more rights and stands with men rather than women. This mindset still prevails. For example, at home, when the son is sitting, then the mother would ask straight away her daughter to bring things, to provide some things. And I think that raising awareness among society is very important. So what we are doing here in the Pan-African Parliament as legislators back home in our parliaments and even within our committees to lift injustice against women and girls. And it is regrettable that in some countries where, for example, the body of women is violated, we do fight in order to empower women to control their own bodies. But we also, during this awareness, should try to that this awareness be conveyed to women, and that we focus in our educational syllabus and curricula that there should be pressure in order to include these principles in the curricula, and that in the books there should be units in order to erase these traditional mindset. And it is also important for information and media to play its role, especially that now we have internet and we have social media, and which we need to use in order to fight against all actions, ideas and laws which do affect women. And I must at the end say, long live to African women, long live, and thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner, for your presentation. We have very much benefited from your statement, and I hope that we will continue working together, and will be able, as it has been referred to by Madame Lucia, to visit other countries in order for women's say to reach them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, presiding over this very important committee of the Pan-African Parliament. And I want to take this opportunity to thank each and every member of Parliament that has spoken and debated, contributed to the debate on the situation of women's rights within the continent, and also thank the legal team for their presentation on the proposed model law. I just want to take the opportunity to briefly respond to most of the interventions that I heard from members of Parliament. And I think, as I indicated, and I want to reiterate that you are a very vital stakeholder in the fight towards upholding women's rights in the continent, because you are parliamentarians. You sit in the forum where laws are made. You have the opportunity and the chance to influence change wherever you find yourself. And as I always tell people that I engage with and interact with, wherever you find yourself, you must leave a legacy. You must be able to say that during my tenure and my term in Parliament, I promoted this law that promoted women's rights. I stood against a law that was actually going to bring about regression in rights. So having said that, I would just want to commend the Vice President. She's not here, but to pass on the message to her for her passion and her commitment. I'm really, really encouraged by her statement on where she stands with regard to women's rights. And of course, I will update the paper because as a special rapporteur on the rights of women, what we do is not only to call out countries that are not compliant, we also like to showcase countries that are fully compliant. That's why even though the Gambia is on the threat of regression, we still commend the Gambia. And sometimes in diplomacy, you don't just call out, you commend. You massage people's egos, it's important, so that they have an incentive to do what you want. I think it's important. So any country that has good practice, you have my cards. I am happy for you to share the information. Send me an email and we will include it in our statement to share with other countries that have not fully complied. So I really want to thank, and I take on board the innovations in Cape Verde, which we're going to take on board in terms of their laws on GBV, the national budget, and planning and everything they've done, the law on parity, and also the fact that she has given me the support in terms of the partnership and collaboration between the Pan-African Parliament and the African Commission at the highest level, beyond the committee, at the level of the Bureau, and hopefully the plenary will also adopt that. And she's indeed right, because at the African Commission, we're not only concerned with committees, we also at the institutional level develop partnerships. But we will also want to bring it back to the technical committees, because within the committees also, it was a good thing I came. I can assure you, and I was telling my sister from the Gambia, it was a difficult time for me. Coming here actually required a lot of sacrifices, but I made it a point of duty to be here. And I'm glad I came. Because just listening to the presentation from the legal team about the model law that is proposed to be introduced, I have concerns which I will express going forward. I have serious concerns, because as organs of the AU, when we interface with member states, we should speak with one voice and not two voices. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about general comments, guidelines, treaties, commitments, or model laws. We must speak with one voice when we interface with member states. Otherwise, what we will do is we will confuse them, because we always go in the name of the AU. We don't go in our personal capacity. PAP is an organ of the AU. African Commission is an organ of the AU. The African Committee of Experts on Rights and Welfare is an organ of the AU. So I think it's very, very, very important that we speak with one voice. Why am I concerned? Because I heard the statement being made that member states were asking, why do we need a model law when we have the Maputo Protocol? And the statement I had is because there are deficiencies in the Maputo Protocol, therefore we must have a model law. I think that message does not augur well. At a time when we're looking for universal ratification of the Maputo Protocol, when states are resisting ratification of the Maputo Protocol, and we tell them there are deficiencies in the Maputo Protocol, that is why we have a model law. We started on the wrong premise. And I am making a fervent appeal that that justification must be withdrawn. It's not a good justification. It will undermine us as a continent. My understanding of model laws at the level of the African Commission, we have general comments, we have guidelines. But these are actually based on the treaty obligations that the member states have actually committed to. So when we prepare general comments, we elaborate on what is provided for in the African Charter or in the Maputo Protocol, and we help member states to implement those provisions. But we do not have say you either follow Maputo or you follow a model law. I see it, maybe our understanding of the model law. A model law should be based on treaty obligations and commitments that member states have subscribed to, and you give them guidelines as to when you want to implement this treaty obligation at national level. This is what you need to put in your legislation. And depending on the legal system that you follow in Africa, because I'm a lawyer by profession also, some countries, as soon as they ratify an instrument, it becomes part of the body of laws. So they can go to court and use that instrument directly. But even in those countries now, increasingly, they're passing legislation to domesticate. Because if it's not domesticated, sometimes it's difficult. In other countries, you can sign and you ratify, but you must actually incorporate it in the laws. Otherwise, women in that context cannot use it. So my understanding is the model laws are supposed to amplify, elaborate, and guide, because as AU organs, that's what we do. We guide member states to comply with their obligations. But we don't bring a parallel instrument and tell them that there's a deficiency in one, therefore follow this one. We do that, then we are, from the very beginning, we start from the wrong premise and we're going to fail. I can say it with conviction. So model law should have comprehensive guidelines to assist implementation of any legal instrument, whether it's Maputo. And Maputo Protocol being the instrument that is celebrated globally, if you talk to the CEDAW committee, they will tell you how impressed they are with Maputo. Where their shortcomings are, Maputo has covered that. So I don't know what women's rights instrument you can have, and I say globally, that is more comprehensive, that is more innovative, that is more revolutionary than the Maputo Protocol. So let us actually uphold our instrument, because one bit about the Maputo Protocol is that it actually takes on board. If you look at the preamble, it mentions all the instruments that were there, including CEDAW, and recognizes that states have an obligation to comply with those, but actually speaks to issues that are unique and relevant to our context. Yes, it was negotiated. Every instrument will have to be negotiated. There is no instrument that from the beginning, the first draft or the draft that is presented will come out wholesale. It is bound to be negotiated, because that's the sovereignty of states. States are sovereign. Then have an obligation. Even if you prepare a model law, the sovereignty of state will still be recognized. So there is no instrument that will. So I'm happy that I came here. And I will appeal that as organs of the AU, let's speak with one voice. I don't want to go to a member state and I say, Maputo is the best. And then PAP goes there and says, Maputo is not good, so therefore take this model law. That is going to we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot, and we will not make any progress. So I'm just appealing on that in terms of what we're trying to do. And at the level of the African Commission, we've issued guidelines on specific provisions of the article to guide trial of sexual offenses. So if you are going to deal with sexual offenses, combating sexual violence at the national level, these are the things you need to put in place. Your law should have this. Your law should have that. That is a form of a model law, because you're giving guidance. But these were on specific articles of Maputo. So at the level of the African Commission, we thought about the issue of having a comprehensive framework. At that time, we were not even aware that the PAP is preparing something. Then we had our forum. That is why, as organs of the AU, we should come together occasionally. We had our forum in Dakar, and the legal officer attended. And we approached him, because we like to do things in collaboration. We've done so much with the Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. When we talk about FGM, we work with the committee. Child marriage, we work with the committee, because we realize the synergies, and that if we do not work together, we will not succeed. And when we talk about the model law, this is the parliament. So we cannot be talking about a model law without talking to the parliament. We spoke to him. And so, by the way, we have an initiative already that is very advanced. We're working on a model law. So then maybe we need to collaborate. But the premise is Maputo, because Maputo takes on board other instruments. So once you deal with Maputo, you deal with the other instruments, really. Because you cannot talk about Maputo without talking about the other instrument, because that is what the preamble to Maputo tells us to do. Let's look at each and every article, and we're not going to share with any article, whether controversial or non-controversial. We guide member states, because that is our mandate. When you want to implement this provision at the national level, this is what to take into consideration. Of course, even when you have a model law, member states are not bound to adopt every article of the model law, just like they did adopt every article of Maputo. They will go back, and when they're looking at what happens at the national level, they will enact legislation based on. I happen to have been on the place of full disclosure. In my professional life and capacity, I was the consultant who worked on the Women's Act in the Gambia. I can assure you that the first draft I presented to the committee that was reviewing and filtering is so radically different. But today we celebrate it, because when you look at a cup, are you saying a half full cup or a half empty cup? Law reform is a process, and change is a long and laborious and tedious process. And you must take stock of every milestone that you've attained, and then you walk towards the rest. It was in 2010 that the Women's Act was enacted. And as we say, whatever you do, you have to do it in a strategically and intelligently. At the time, the environment was not conducive to have everything that we wanted in the Women's Act. So we had a provision in the Women's Act that said every 10 years, the act should be reviewed to see how we can move the frontiers and the barriers. The honorable members of the National Assembly is here. In 2020, there were so many bills that came to the National Assembly. implementing that article in the Women's Act, reviewing so many laws under Gambia, building on some of the things that are contained in the Women's Act. So there are strategies you can employ. Society evolves, society changes, and this is what you do to ensure that you get to where you want. 2020, we're hoping that in 2030 also, we will review the laws and see where we can make progress. But please, I'm appealing, do not go to the member state and tell them that Maputo is not good, therefore let's have a model law. Please. I mean, you cannot be doing that. Honorable Njai, thank you very much. I know who feels it knows it best. You are a survivor, you are a victim, you know what it's like, and you are a member of the National Assembly. And we all know the good work you're doing at the level of the National Assembly, not only in the Gambia, but beyond the Gambia. Because the world is a global village. What happens in the Gambia is known everywhere. I think the Vice President has indicated that permissions should be filled in the Gambia. That would be most welcome, because who is better suited to talk to the National Assembly of the Gambia than their peers in the Pan-African Parliament? They're talking about, there's a perception in the Gambia, we're being influenced by external, but these are your peers. You're members of the same parliament. You speak the same language, you can come. But I don't want us to restrict our intervention to the 4th of July, because I'm also part of an organ of the AU. I know it takes a long process to get approvals, adoption, plenary will adopt, processes and resources. So there are different dates and milestones. If we just insist that it has to be 4th of July and 4th of July is not possible, then we say there's 4th of July, there's 16th or 17th of July. 4th of July will be the report. If it is possible, it will be beautiful. But if it's not possible, before the deputies, I will just say, before the deputies start debating the bill again, that is the most crucial, because they now start debating the bill, and that's around the 16, 17 or thereabout. So maybe that will be a more realistic target. If 4th of July is too soon, before the 16, 17, because the committee makes their report. And she knows sometimes the committee make their report and members decide what they want to decide. But that will be the day when each of the members will be speaking on the bill. And before that, I have actually secured funding from the UN Women. And they've told me that they prepared to organize a wholesale sensitization activity with parliamentarians. And we want to do that before the 16th. If we're able to collaborate as a team, and before the 16th, these members of the Gender Committee join us in that forum, or whatever means, I'm not going to restrict or restrain you. You can, on what of them. Please, by all means, before the members debate, speak on the floor to start debating, talk to your colleagues. Also, before the 4th, I don't know whether you have that in the Pan-African Parliament, because at the African Commission, we have our letters that we write ahead of time. An appeal to your colleagues can go ahead before the 4th. Just a letter of appeal and tell them we would like to come and seek audience with them subsequently. These are strategies. As I mentioned in my paper, smart strategies must be put in place. As diplomatic strategies also. Cannot be forceful. These are parliamentarians. They have their right. And they have their constituents. One of the things we want to do in the Gambia is want to go with them to their constituents, because some of them actually know that FGM is bad. But they want to stay in parliament. And they want to pander to their constituents. So we've promised them that we are going to come to your constituents and help you talk to your constituents. So these are some of the things that we... And what we have done is to put together an ad hoc group of senior people in the Gambia. Senior women. Senior religious leaders, senior traditional leaders. So it doesn't look like the AU or somebody else is coming to talk to them. We just help them, we accompany them, and we allow them. And most of those senior leaders, by the way, are survivors. And when they speak, people listen to them. So it's a strategy that I will sell to you. Seychelles and Mauritius, you don't have FGM, you don't have child marriage, and you are lucky that you don't have tribes. God has blessed you with that. But do not rest on your laurels. The world is a global village. You must have legislation that prohibit FGM and that prohibit child marriage. Because people visit your country. They'll be there with their children. And they will go home and do FGM. So there shouldn't be any safe haven. In Norway, England, and all these countries, they're not Africans, but they have laws. So by all means, encourage your National Assembly to expressly prohibit and have provision where if people visit your country and they're living in your country and you are aware that they've committed FGM, let the law catch them in Seychelles and in Mauritius. So the world is so in solidarity also, I would like you to join your colleagues
to send a message to your colleagues in the Gambia, despite the fact that it doesn't happen. You've talked about the root causes. And you said, why do we need to have a model law when we already have somebody, one of you from Seychelles, when we already have the Maputo Protocol? By the way, both Mauritius and Seychelles are, no, one of you, I think it's Seychelles, the lady from Seychelles, yeah. Both Mauritius and Seychelles have ratified Maputo Protocol. Yes, you have. I heard some of you saying that Seychelles has not ratified, maybe not domesticated. Domesticated. Yes, well, you have ratified. Maybe it's the interpretation. But Seychelles has actually ratified. Yes, okay. What are the root causes? I was having discussions with someone in the Gambia, and I said, unfortunately, the FGM issue is becoming a political issue. Some of the parties that are keeping quiet do not even like FGM, but they want to use it as a card. So if the government says we don't want FGM, when they go campaign, they will tell the people in the constituencies, you see, we like you because we are not speaking against your culture. So they would like to use that as a political issue. Again, in the Gambia, we have a newfound democracy in the Gambia. You know, when you go to a dictatorship for 20-something years, the difficult situation to manage is post-dictatorship. Everybody who's gone to a revolution like the Arab Spring and everything, they will tell you that the Arab Spring did not even favor women. Women in those countries were complaining that we seem to have a better opportunity dictator. Because in those days, when you say one thing, everybody falls in line. But now we have a newfound freedom, and we don't know how to manage that. So the loud minority, not the majority, by the way, the loud minority are now influencing everybody and undoing a lot of good work that happened. Because it's not everything that happened during the dictatorship that was horrible, that was bad. There were a few things. And I think the FGM thing was one of the most progressive things that happened during the dictatorship. But the clawback is happening, regression is happening, because there's democracy. These days, you cannot just arrest people and put them in one place. You have to listen to everybody. But of course, like what the honorable member from the Gambia has indicated, but when people flout the laws with courage of conviction, they should be held accountable. The FGM law, there's a bill before Parliament, but it has not been repealed yet. And we hope it won't be. But until it is repealed, by all means, if anybody tries to do anything that undermines it, take responsibility. It's been politicized. I think if I can just tell it to root causes. Benin, talking about countries, wanted to know countries that have not ratified. Yeah, I think it's important. Sometimes it's important to know which one of your peers that have not ratified. Some have spoken. But we have Egypt, Morocco, Burundi, Central African Republic were informed, had ratified sometime in the past. But, you know, with the change of government, the instrument has not been deposited and it's difficult to trace. So there are efforts underway to raise awareness, to interact with them and see whether they can trace the instrument and deposit it. But because until you deposit your instrument, you're considered not to have ratified. Chad has not ratified. Eritrea, Madagascar, Niger, Somalia. The lady from Djibouti has indicated that she's doing good work in Somalia, and Sudan. They have not ratified. So there's a lot that you can do with your peers. These are the countries that have not ratified. But there are countries that have ratified but haven't done anything in terms of implementation. So we need to work together as a team. I take on board the concerns raised by Zimbabwe and Angola and all the good work that is happening in Zimbabwe and Angola, but more needs to be done. Djibouti also, we know the context in Djibouti. You may have ratified, but the reality is, most of the things that you find in the Maputo Protocol, you find in reality, in practice, they're happening. So there's still room for sensitization and awareness raising. So that the issue of child marriage, even though it is prohibited, it's like in the Gambia, we have the basic education is compulsory. Mean that every child must be in school up to grade 9. But every day we find young children carrying plates on their heads, selling during school hour, and nobody arrests them. So the law says one thing, but the reality on the ground is different. But of course, it's really still commendable to have a legal framework, and we commend you for that. But let's make sure that the legal framework is implemented. Deputy Chairperson and the chair of this occasion today, thank you very much. As I indicated also, there are countries that have not ratified the Maputo Protocol, but they have laws at the national level that are very progressive. For example, Botswana was the last country that ratified the Maputo the 45th country. But even though they had not ratified the Maputo Protocol, if you look at the gender index, they were doing so well. And when we went on the promotion mission, we said, why do you want to present yourself in a bad light? You're doing so well with the gender index. They are doing so well. It's commendable, all their laws. And this was what we used. I said, it's just that last tick. So there are countries that have not even ratified and are doing very well. I think Morocco, you may have a lot of initiatives on the ground regarding women's rights, women's welfare and well-being, but you still haven't ratified. And as a member of the National Assembly of Morocco, my appeal to you is to see how you can raise awareness. And there's been a promotion mission to Morocco, by the way. The African Commission has visited Morocco. The civil society organizations have visited Morocco just to raise awareness about ratification. In fact, when we had the forum in Dakar, the chairperson of